This is an Adirondack guide boat built by Adirondack Bike Boat Company in Ferrisburg, Vermont. It's made of fiberglass and Kevlar with wood trim. It's 15 feet long. It weighs about 70 pounds. And as an Adirondack guide boat, it was sort of like a canoe for the Adirondack lakes to carry loads and for people to fish. It had 3 seats in it, and you can see the 3 seats. Underneath the middle seat is a sliding seat for the rowing, which I'll explain later, but generally when the guide boat comes, it's just the 3 seats, and oftentimes one guy sits in the stern. The guide will sit in the stern and paddle using oars on these oarlocks here, and then the fisherman will sit in the other end and cast. So this is the boat that I got. I had one of these years ago for the Adirondack Canoe Classic, and it's a 90-mile race, 3 days, and I used the typical guide boat oars, which are fixed oars. There's no sliding seat. And I'm going to show you how those Adirondack guide boat oars work in a second here. So these oars, which are made by Sean Tenney, these are actually 30-year-old oars that I used in the race. They have a fixed rigger pin, you see there, and what you do is when you row with them, you put the pin in the oarlock and the oars in the pin, and it's always square. It's always square, and so what you can do is you'll never lose the oar, because if you let go of the oar, it just hangs in the pin. But because it's always square, if you're rowing into a headwind, it's harder to do it. The other thing about this guide boat is, unlike a canoe, though it looks like a canoe, it actually has a very narrow, flat section in the bottom. And it doesn't draw very much water. You notice the amount of flare on the sides. And so it tracks very, very well. And it gets better and better with a bigger load and with rough water. So I used to be a competitive rower, and I wanted a boat to row. Don't have a dock on the water, and that's a problem. And I'm not going to carry a boat in my car every day. I wanted something I could store at a local marina and use every day, mainly for exercise. So what I did, and Adirondack Guide Boat Company does this, is they have a sliding seat system that you can bolt or put into the floorboards. So the seat slides back and forth. I have a pad on it. And then they have a foot brace. And the foot brace that Adirondack Guide Boat covers is this wooden thing here. And I made a bunch of modifications, which I'll explain later. Now, there's another option. The trick with a sliding seat and rowing is you need oars that you can feather, and it has to be easy to do it. And I was provided an oarlock that you can do that with. It's a brass oarlock. It's a brass oarlock. This is a picture of it. And you see the oar can slide into it. Excuse me here. The oar can slide into it from the narrower section, right? And then when you push the oar out, it can't pop out. And that way, when you row, and these oars are built by Sean Tenney. They're wooden oars with a special flat piece for feathering. So when you have it in the oarlock, you can feather it, and then see the board is square. It goes through the water, and then you feather it and back. So this is the option, the cheap option, the easy option, and I think most people would be happy with it. But if you really want to row the boat, this doesn't work too well, because this oarlock is too low to the gunnel for the oar handle where you're sitting on the seat. And the bigger problem is you're rowing, the whole oarlock's turning in the oarlock, and it's a little clunky to feather it. I started with these oarlocks, and I ended up having to use grease. It wasn't sufficient, so I ended up on a fairly elaborate system of trial and error to build the right kind of rigger system, which I will explain when I'm out on the water. And this dolly wheel rig I have is great because I can use it to push the boat, carry the boat out to a lift you see here at the marina, which just drops me into the water. So this is ideal for me. I'm about 4 miles from here, so it's perfect. I just get in the boat and the lift drops in the water and I'm ready to go. All right, see you on the water. Now remember, I said that the Adirondack guide boat oars are fixed, so they're always square, and that's tougher rowing into a headwind. They also tend to be mounted a little closer to the gunnel. The oarlock that I put on the pin and forgot to take out before coming out here, that kind of works for feathering blades, but it's a little clunky. And the friction just in the oarlock, with the oarlock itself turning in the pin every time, it was an effort to feather the blades, and that wasn't very pleasant. And I've been spoiled because I used to row competitively, and feathering is beautiful. It's easy. It's a whole science. And there's a whole science with how you set up your oarlocks and angle of your oar and everything, so everything's right. So I tried some different options and came up with an option that required some sort of weird engineering. I ordered oarlock pins from Pocock, which builds racing shells, 7.5-inch, half-inch diameter pins that are used to mount oarlocks on their big racing shells and maybe single sculls. And that pin, interestingly enough, fit right into the opening of the oarlock mounted on the side of the boat, but the threaded end of that pin, because this oarlock on the boat is 2¼ inches long or deep, the threaded end of the pin didn't extend beyond the end of the oarlock, so I couldn't put a nut on the end to fasten it to the oarlock. So I went to a machine shop and drilled and lathed back about 3/4 inch of the pin. It's fatter in the middle for some reason. And that way they fit in, and there's enough thread at the bottom so I have a stainless steel nut holding it down. So the pin is in the oarlock very rigidly. And then on the oarlock, on the pin itself, was then placed this sculling oarlock, actually. This oarlock right here with the gate, which you can open and close. And that's the oarlock that I have on these oars. And then these blue spacers can adjust how high above the rail you want to be. And notice that I have my left oar higher 2 pins as opposed to 0 pins on the right. That way my left hand, which is the hand that crosses above the right hand as I pull through, is a little bit higher. So it works really well. The other piece, of course, is because the oarlock pins are in the oarlock holes in the boat, and the side of the boat is somewhat slanted, that means the pin faces out a little bit. And I had a little concern about, you know, would that mean when I get up to the catch, would the oar be square as it goes into the water? And it is. And then when I'm recovering, when I'm bringing the oar back, is there a little bit of an angle, so if I hit a wave, it'll bounce off the wave instead of getting caught by the wave. And that's also the case. And there's actually, if you really want to get anal about it, there's a way to set the angle of that oarlock lean so you can have more or less squaring. I adjusted it so I had a little bit more. So now when I get up to the catch end with the boat and I drop the oar in the water, it goes in perfectly straight. If it went in at an angle, not fully squared, when I pull, it just dives into the water. And that completely messes up the stroke, and it's just no fun. And if you over square, it'll skip in the water. But this seems to work. So this is the system I have, using, you know, common gear from competitive rowers, and it works beautifully in this guide boat. And then the final big piece here is the foot stretcher, the brace for the foot. As I said earlier, the Adirondack guide boat makes a nice wooden brace that you can rest your feet against and strap yourself in, but it doesn't have heel cups, and that's what you really need. So what I did after thinking about it was Concept 2 makes this rowing machine, the rowing ergometer, the beast from hell, the unforgiving, honest beast. People race 2,000 meters on this damn thing, and it's an unforgiving, difficult machine. But the foot braces for that Concept 2 rowing machine are these plastic things with a heel cup, and what I did is I ordered a pair of those, and I screwed those onto the wooden plate that Adirondack guide boat gave me. So now I have heel cups, so when I come up to the catch and my heel rises, I stay in position. And I mean, it works really, really well. And because it's attached with Velcro straps and I have these convenient gaps in the wood for some reason, almost like it was designed that way. It works perfectly. And then the final thing is I modified again this foot thing. I added this metal plate and bent it a little bit so I can mount my cell phone on that Velcro. And I have an app on the cell phone called Rowing in Motion, another one called Crew Nerd, and it'll keep me track of where I am, strokes per minute, speed over the ground, how much time's elapsed, what my speed over 500 meters is. And now we're rowing out, and I'm rowing out in Puget Sound. It's a beautiful day today. I rowed all year in the winter and summer, and it would get kind of windy. And this boat can handle wind well. It's very dry. It's very safe that way, and it has to be because it can get snotty out here in a hurry. Plus there are wicked currents out here, and with standing waves, and when you get the wind against the current, it can get really sketchy really fast. So I watch the wind and try to look for lees. I'm careful because I'm old and a coward, but I've been caught a couple times in some bad slop, and it's been great. I have a lot more confidence in the boat than I originally did. I'm really comfortable with it. It tracks really well. It goes along. It's not as fast as a single scull by any means, but just as I'd argue, just as pleasant to row, much safer, and it's traditional. The other way people have turned guide boats and other open boats into pulling boats, rowboats, is they have these built-in rigs that have a sliding seat and a foot stretcher and outriggers. Rowing makes one, I think, and they drop into the boat and you can row with sculling oars. They're great, but the trouble is that then the outriggers stick out of the side of the boat, makes it harder to store the boat, and I don't think it's as traditional or as nice as this. This has the traditional 8-foot oars from Sean Tenney, and then it's what the boat was designed for, was for 8-foot oars, and but because I've set it up this way, it feels just like a single scull. It's just wonderful. So that's all great. The currents out here are strong. I can be going along, and my boat speed's about 5 miles an hour. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that turns out to. It's somewhere around 3 minutes and 40 seconds for 500 meters. But sometimes I'm in a fair current, I'm down to 2 minutes for 500 meters, and other times I'm in a head current and it's 7 minutes for 500 meters. So it really varies. But overall on net, it's about 5 miles an hour. So this is the gig, this is the boat. These are all the things that I put together for it, and I'm very happy with it. It works really well, and I wish some other people would get a boat like this so I could have some races out here. And I think, again, the Adirondack guideboat company that made it. And the reason I'm showing you this freaking out because there's a fishing boat in front of them. But if you go over here to the left just a little way, you see an opening just past that breakwater. That's where the public boat launch is, the ramps into the water. So in the case where it gets rough out here and I can't get into the lift because it's too choppy, I can work my boat around just a quarter mile to this boat launch, beach it on the boat launch, put it on the dolly wheels, which I carry in the boat all the time, and then I can just walk it back to the marina. And that's a really good system. Now there's another element to the system, and then I'm done, I promise you, and that is on the foot braces. You'll notice that with these Concept 2 rowing ergometer foot pad or foot locks, they're big enough so you can wear sneakers, and that's what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a pair of very light, like running sneakers. Traditionally, rowing boats have shoes actually mounted on the foot stretchers, and you just put your feet in those shoes with socks on, and you might wear a pair of sneakers to bring the boat down to the dock. And I elected to go this way because I want these sneakers. I use these sneakers when I pull the boat out, and if I have to walk the boat over in the boat launch, I can. And it's one less thing to take off and be bumping around in the boat when I'm in the boat. My friend Len, who's a coach, sent me some great actually rowing stretchers, and I could have put them on here instead of these Concept 2 things, but then I would have had to take these sneakers off, leave them in the boat, and stick my socking feet in the stretchers, and that seemed kind of tedious and actually honestly unnecessary for what I'm doing here. And you can see here There's a lot of boats out today. It's Saturday, but that down there beyond the marina is Point Defiance Park. It's an 800-acre wilderness park, really. Beyond, that's the other side of Puget Sound where Gig Harbor is, about 3 miles away. Then to the right, where the ferry's headed, that's Vashon Island, about the size of Manhattan Island. And you see Maury Island next to it. Then there's Puget Sound, and then back over this way, that's down toward the main city of Tacoma. You see all the houses. So I have a lot of good water to row on here. Usually the wind comes from the southwest, which is this direction. And so that bluff forms a lee, and so you can usually work along the shore here even if it's blowing southwest. When it's coming from the west, or particularly the northwest, then it gets nasty. On days when it's coming light northerly, I'll paddle into the wind up by Vashon Island and roll around there, and then I have a fair wind coming back. But I gotta be careful. If you have the wind against the tidal current, you get some wicked standing waves, and it can be very attention grabbing. Anyway, so that's it. That's all for here, and thanks a lot.